Hey everybody, we're back for a tour, I guess. I really need to get my acting skills in car here. Hopefully you can hear me okay since it's a little windy. But this is our little raised bed garden that we got done. We've got all kinds of squash in here. Acorn squash and butternut squash. And there's some melons in here planted, and in between each little row of melons or squash, we planted some sunflowers. And over here we got some popcorn and some other sunflowers we got planted. Looks like some of them are coming up. That giant seed right there is from a sunflower called Mongolian Giant. The plant itself is supposed to get 14 to 16 feet tall, and then the actual head of the sunflower is supposed to get to 18 inches to 2 foot across. So I'm pretty excited for those. We'll go in here and talk a little bit about cucumbers. Make sure that shuts behind you. Our beans have blossoms on them. Totally cool. And we have some of our little romaine lettuce coming up that we talked about last week. I'll have to get some water on those later. So with cucumbers, I'm going to blow your mind here for a second. Did you know that you can trim cucumbers to get them to be more productive? And I marked this plant over here to show you where we want to trim our cucumbers. Okay. You see how there's a fruit right here coming off? And then there's the stem, the regular stem. And you see this little guy right here? We don't want him. We're going to go pinch like that. And then there's another one right here coming. We want to pinch that, but leave the fruit. And yep, we got cucumbers Lex was showing you.
Yeah.
These guys are loaded.
And we got one right here too.
Yep. And there's another one over here I need to show you. See, this one's actually a better one to show you. See this stem? Even though it's got a fruit on it, I'm going to pinch it off. I don't want it. I like my cucumbers to have 1 liter. See, here's a good example right here too. See how the fruit comes off this little stem? Don't mess with it too much. And we're going to pluck this guy right off.
Boop.
We're going to pluck this guy off too.
Boop.
Now, unlike tomatoes, you can't plant this and get it to regroup or re-root. Now we're going to talk about squash a little bit. Look at how big these tomatoes are. Do you remember how much shorter they were last week? Tomatoes really like those humid nights. So, the white powder on these squash plants is actually kaolin clay. We sprinkled it on. Actually, I made Axel do it. The squash bugs don't like stuff they can't get their feet stuck to. They have little suction cups or little hairs on their feet that make them stick to the plant. Well, the kaolin clay prevents that. Or is supposed to, so I've heard. So we sprinkled it on ours, and we shouldn't have to reapply ours because it doesn't rain in here, and I don't overhead water. So you can do the same thing. I used like a little, where did it go? I had Axel use, he must have taken it in. It's the little tea strainer, you know, the little thing you squeeze and then you can scoop up your tea leaves with it and then steep your tea. That's what we used. I'm sure you could just hand sprinkle it on too. Now, something else I wanted to talk to you about squash is I've been trellising mine or staking it, and I saw You know how the other squash bugs, the vine borers, come in and they bore to lay their eggs in your squash vine? Axel did this for me to protect the bottom of the plant. It's little pieces of our drip line that are scrap, and we put them around the bottom of our squash. And I've been trimming my squash. See, this leaf will go the next time I trim. So anything under the fruit, I've been trimming off. Now is the season for powdery mildew, which is a fungus that attaches itself to the leaves and spreads very fast. It's caused by water droplets splashing on the soil and then splashing up onto the plant, because fungal infections are actually soil-borne and then they leave in the wind or the water or however they decide to go. So one of the questions that was asked was how to prevent that. It's kind of inevitable. You're going to deal with it or you're not going to deal with it. I haven't seen an issue with it yet this year, knock on wood. But one of the things I saw was you can take 3 tablespoons of baking soda or sodium bicarbonate, and you mix it in a gallon of water with a teaspoon of vegetable oil, and then like a teaspoon of a gentle dish soap. Wow, you better eat those. A teaspoon of dish soap, like not something that's harsh. You probably wouldn't want something that's grease removing. You probably want something that's a little more ecological or environmentally, whatever that word is. You know what I'm saying. So you're not ruining the soil biology of your garden. And then you spray it on the plants as a preventative measure. Powdery mildew is, like I said, it's inevitable. It should be coming on right about now. And Jerry, to answer your questions about beans, I looked it up, and pinching them off does really nothing but make the plant bushier. It doesn't really make it set more beans. But you see we have our pole beans climbing. I really like how purple the flowers are. Aren't they pretty? So we have yellow zucchini. It's not your summer squash with the little bumps on it or the crook neck. These are actually a yellow zucchini. If anybody needs zucchini, we should have our farm stand turn around this weekend. We've got eggs and peas, zucchini. Excellent. It's ready too. I believe our broccoli is starting to do its thing as well. I gotta pull these beets over here and can them. I'm leaving them in the ground to store. Axel added more soil to our potatoes. They're looking really well. No potato bugs so far for us. Our carrots. Alright, now we're off to the big house.
Oh, and here's our Lola too.
And we finished our flower beds, just waiting on mulch whenever we get to the store to get mulch. We got lavender in there and some, can't remember the name of it. I've got echinacea in there, or coneflowers, and some thyme. All these are lovely bee attractors. Alright. Remember this house last week? I came in here and I trellised all the tomato plants and trimmed. This is your weekly reminder to trim your suckers and your leaves off your tomatoes. The bottoms of your plants you should be able to see through. And that is going to create space for wind and air, or wind is air, I guess, to go through your plants. Air movement is a big factor in disease control and pest control. And now, if you are one that doesn't really like picking your tomato worms off of your plants, you can start spraying with, I use Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew, which is spinosad. You can use a BT. Both of those are a bacterial spray that will attach itself to the leaf, and it will, when the worm chews on the leaf, it will start eating the worm from the inside out. The bacteria does. So it's pretty cool. It works on soft-bodied creatures. I usually spray it at night. Don't spray it during the day when your pollinators and stuff out. Or your pollinators are out, excuse me, I can't talk today. So, our cucumbers are doing really well. The ones that we just planted, remember I put all those little white tags in, they sprouted. And then I came through and thinned them out because I plant 2 seeds in each hole and I pick the best looking plant or just pick one to pluck off. But yeah, we've got tomatoes setting fruit already. These are my Amish paste tomatoes. So, looking pretty good. Pretty excited. And I just trellised these on Saturday, and I already got to trellis them again. I use these clips called tomato clips. They're really cool. I'll show you how they work in just a moment. Actually, I need my trimmers. So I got a plant I want to show you guys something on. Okay, so let's go this way. So I have this tomato plant down here to show you. Now, do you see the 2 leads on this plant? Some farmers or some tomato growers do what's called a double leader on their tomato plants. I don't, because it gets too confusing for me, especially with my lower and lean method for trellising. So, I want to show you how to distinguish between the real leader and the sucker leader. Do you see how the sucker leader comes out of in between a crotch of the sunleaf and the actual stem of the plant? I don't want that. So I'm going to come in and trim that off.
Ooh, can I go plant it?
Yep. So that's how to distinguish between that. I know sometimes it's confusing. And you see this little sucker starting right here. That's what that little guy, or that big guy came from that she's got in her hand.
Yeah, I'm going to plant it.
So then, I want to show you how these tomato clips work. So I got this plant. See, there's another sucker right there, missed. It's very important to clip those off. Now, if you have a hard time distinguishing the top of the plant from a sucker, this is the very top of the plant. See those there's little teeny tiny blossoms coming in there. And this right here is a sucker. Back off, please. Now, some farmers leave that sucker because if this top of the plant were to snap off, that's it for this plant. It's going to set its fruit and be done. But I just wanted to show you that. I mean, you can leave it. I usually do. So, these awesome tomato clips here, I got them from JohnnySelectedSeeds.com. I believe they're like $30 for 500 of them or something. They're really not bad, and you can use them for anything. They're reusable. So, see that little corner or that little place you can stick your string? You're going to stick your string in there behind those little things, and then you're going to snap it. Like that. You can use them on peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes, whatever you want to use them on. So, one other question I had was, what's the difference between a determinate tomato and an indeterminate tomato? A determinate tomato has a determined growth, a determined number of days until it sets fruit, or all of it comes ripe at the same time. It usually doesn't grow more than, 4 foot tall. They're really good for container growing, but they all set fruit at the same time usually. So if you don't want to pick tomatoes all season, then a determinate tomato would be great for you. They're really good for shorter season growers. northern growers or even southern growers. Southern growers have a very short window for growing tomatoes because it gets so hot. Believe it or not, tomatoes do not like it hot. I just read they like it in between 65 and like 85 degrees. Anything over that, they're stressing. They're stressing to hold on to their fruit, their blossoms. I've actually had it so back to the indeterminate discussion. So an indeterminate tomato is one that's going to keep growing until inevitably the frost comes, or you pull it out of the ground, or you pinch off the top and make it set fruit. I like growing indeterminate tomatoes because in these hoop houses, I can get them to grow vertically for pretty much as long as I want. There was one video I just watched. They actually grew their their tomatoes. They started them in January, and obviously they heated their greenhouse. But their tomato vines, by June, were 84 feet long. That is amazing. It is, like, it'll never happen for me, but that is life goals, man. So an indeterminate tomato is one that's going to keep growing. It sets fruit whenever the fruit decides it's going to be ripe. There's more varieties of indeterminate tomatoes. They're my favorite. Look, she planted those suckers. Kids. So, and then the discussion turns to heirloom and hybrid. Now, an heirloom is going to be a historical tomato, I guess. It's unaltered as far as crossbreeding. Those are like your Brandywines, your mortgage lifters. Cherokee Purple is also an heirloom. Now, your hybrids are a cross. It's not genetically modified, even though people will argue for genetically modified hybrids. A hybrid is a cross. Genetically modified is when you take the DNA of a plant or anything, and you take a piece of the DNA out and you plug in a piece of DNA from something else. And a hybrid is a cross. You specifically cross two plants by pollination. So, hybrids. Hybrids are like your Sweet 100 cherry tomatoes, your Better Boys, your, there's a variety called BHN98 or something like that, your celebrity tomatoes. There's Sakuras, there's Sun Golds. Are you really eating that beet? You are so silly. Is it good? Is it sweet? So I like growing the Sweet 100s for a cherry tomato. I also grow a variety called Sakura, which is a greenhouse variety. So let's talk potato leaf and regular leaf tomato plants. Potato leaf plants are called that because their leaf looks, I'm assuming, like a potato leaf, or it looks like a potato itself. I wasn't really clear on that. This here is a Brandywine variety, and this is a potato leaf plant. See how large that is and how short the actual sun leaf is, but how large these little leaflets are. So potato leaves are usually a hybrid tomato. See, there's more Brandywines over here that are the same way. A regular tomato leaf is like that, more serrated, not as round. Cherry tomatoes are usually that way as well, like these cherries over here, those leaves. Now, another question was how to get your peppers to grow faster. Peppers are slow to start. I planted these, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and literally the last couple days is when I've noticed the more growth. If you notice that your transplants have blossoms on them, you can pinch them off. Pinch those little dudes off, because then the plant is going to focus more on establishing roots than setting fruit. But these guys are starting to pick up, so just give them a little time and they'll pick back up. Hot peppers usually take a little longer to get going because they're really more finicky than the other ones. What you should be dealing with right now are cucumber beetles. the best way I found to get rid of cucumber beetles is to hand pick them off. They're little tiny black and yellow beetles, and they get in there and they screw up the blossom, which screws up the fruit, makes it look imperfect. If you're not worried about it, then don't worry about it. Aphids. I didn't really research on how to get rid of aphids. I've never had to deal with aphids. Knock on wood. Aphids are out and about right now. Ants take care of aphids. So do praying mantises and ladybugs. Someone just told me that they couldn't find ladybugs in stock. I'm only imagining that it's because of pot growers or gardeners right now. Ladybugs are pretty inexpensive. They're a beneficial bug. They take care of a lot. They actually farm the aphids, so they always have something to eat. I guess it's kind of like us. We farm tomatoes or farm peppers or whatever. That's all I have for the aphids. I'll get back to you on the aphids for sure. The only other issue right now is probably sun. We got shade cloth on this house. It dropped the temperature probably 10 to 15 degrees. I couldn't even be in here last week when it was like 80 outside and my plants weren't like it. So there's less water being evaporated from the soil. And another cool thing is we like our drip lines because, we're not watering. There's a few weeds there, but we're not watering the weeds. We're not watering the soil where there's no plants. When you overhead water or sprinkle, you're essentially letting all those seeds from those weeds germinate. And that's why I really like no-till, is because when you no-till, they do till, but they only till like the first 2 or 3 inches of the soil. And eventually, after so many years, you're going to exhaust that bed of weed seeds. And, my other 2 houses, I think this is their 3rd year growing. They've never been tilled. I only use the Broad Fork. The weeds are at a minimal, really, except for things that blow in, things that, like thistle or the cottonwood trees blow in. So hopefully soon, this house will be the same way.